Thank you so much, Marshall, and what a warm and loving introduction. So, and I guess that the latter part of that I think is a really interesting start point for this, in that, um, one of the things that I've been finding is that it's really hard to get people to ask good questions, because good questions end up taking us into spaces of uncertainty, and our education and our governance systems worldwide tend to dismiss the value of uncertainty. They reward people for knowing things and being predictable. And one of the consequences of that, we're really unpracticed at exploring the comfort that uncertainty can bring, rather than associate it with the discomfort of humiliation and looking stupid and everything else. And so when we unpack, when we ask big ideas, the one that Johnny knows I talk about a lot, and we've talked about together, is to say, if you couldn't fail and took the context and the substrate fully into account, what is it you'd set out to do? And of course, that is really, really, really simple stuff often, because you can ask questions like, um, on a nuclear submarine, how many people do you think the captain lets on board who've never been trained on how to run nuclear submarines? You kind of go, yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, just by all means, you've done your driving test, come take the helm. So people who work in areas of high dynamic risk are really, really good at understanding how to get people ready for what's going on, for instance. Yet the idea of being ready within institution, civic, or enterprise is almost alien, because we spend so little time looking forward rather than backwards. So what I thought I'd do is my experience of share on an analog, old-fashioned PowerPoint slide some examples of how I've been using What's Up With That to help me with my thinking on a real-world project. Okay, so what I've been playing with is the idea of developing a UK readiness network. So how do we create a national sensing and learning system so that people in civic organizations, communities, can get trained up to sense what's happening in the world around them and aggregate that feedback in meaningful ways so that the people with budgets and resources can develop it. And so I'm sharing this with partners across the UK. And so I created a 4 or 5 page document with Claude and a bunch of other AI tools, and then shared it and then ran it through a What's Up With That filter. And one of the most useful things that, as those of you who use it know, but quickly comes up with these frameworks about what's most noticeable about the proposal. So if it's something that's new to you and you haven't written, it's an amazing way of quickly distilling those points. But one of the bits I really value is when you can flag up what are the concerns about the document, what are the critiques about it. So quickly getting from someone you don't know, so to speak, telling you what's wrong about the idea that you've lovingly crafted has been invaluable. And I've run this paper through 2 or 3 iterations of the critique. So take the critique, drop it back into Claude, work through the critiques, build it back into document, and the show again to What's Up With That. And it's like having an intellectual sparring partner that helps to improve the quality of the ideas. And I found that incredibly useful, as well as being able to use the critique bit as a quick way of giving feedback to colleagues who might share documents with me to go, hey, here's some things you might not have thought about. Here's a way of putting on a quick black hat. Found that incredibly valuable. The research questions that the Marshall's built in, I found really helpful about getting access to the different kinds of questions that I might ask about with partners about this work I'm doing. So, for instance, questions about accessibility, what kind of organizations are already acting as warning sensors? These are questions that I could definitely have come up with by myself, or if I was jamming these with any of you, I'm sure we'd come up with. I can just get them delivered in a few seconds rather than an hour. So it's saving a huge amount of time creating those. And what I really like is the simplicity of the language and the absence of acronyms or complexity, because it makes it much closer to being impossible to understand rather than work through. And there's this neat piece that I like about, you can look at either the scientific research or articles relating to each of those topics. So you can kind of dig into the specifics about community engaged research or whatever in those topics to the peer reviewed side, or find out who's been doing work in this space beforehand. And this definitely, for me, brings up people that I haven't heard of. I mean, I've heard of Sun Tzu and have read The Art of War, but the other stuff I haven't come across. It's a great way of bringing in kind of wildcard views that I can keep on my do list. And then again, these risks, about explicit risks and higher level insights that we can kind of bring about what that work might mean elsewhere. And there's again this really quick takes about what might the aggregation of those signals look like from different perspectives. And again, I'm sharing these with the colleagues I'm developing this with. It gives a useful opportunity to do a systems analysis. So where are the potential, and this is based on a lovely, I guess, set of commands that Marshall's built in again that has simplicity of language and really easy to understand what the traps might be, what the leverage points are in terms of this document, um, as well as looking at the kind of architecture from different perspectives. And again, any of us could draw this up in Miro, but to be able to do it in seconds is a really lovely shortcut. And I guess my sense is that there's something about having multiple tools that I could easily build into a bunch of Claude or ChatGPT commands in one place, is super helpful. I really, and I only came across this one earlier today, but about using the kind of TRIZ engineering principles to look at problems and solutions. Again, gives those kind of clarity of this. And I've come across TRIZ in my early work around biomimicry with a guy called Julian Vincent over here. But it's a lovely way, again, of looking at different problems that it might be solving that you haven't thought of, but also different potential problems that might crop up further down the line. Um, the area that I was looking at around sensing and sensing the community level, not surprisingly, isn't massively richly researched. But even so, the geographic hotspots piece you can click on to find out where else in the world across the geographies that you can see are the high, medium, or low levels of confidence about what's going on elsewhere with links. And I found that useful. And again, it shows the need to populate those as well as the absence. And I picked up 3 or 4 examples here of where in the UK some of the work that might be related to this is going on, and there's enough information in this to look at some of the dates and resources to be able to dig into that if I wanted to go into do further research through Google. I thought in terms of there's a story framework which is quite neat around that allows us to choose different kind of frameworks of telling an arc of a story, and one of the ones that's available is this what, so what, now what, which gives these 3 super short chapters that I might share with someone who might never have thought about the work we're doing before, but explain it through the arc of a story. So this is one, or you might look at a 3-act play, which again, Marshall shared with me before, is a lovely way of telling in bite-sized chunks the arc of what we're doing. And the playbook bit I didn't explore in massive detail, but I think there's a neat opportunity here to start building that into resources to share. And there's an opportunity to build these expert panels from the people that I choose or that in effect have been pre-selected around a question that I asked. So you can have preset questions. Here's a question I asked around how can governance models change, and then got these different profiles of people that are generated by WhatsApp with that can give me simulated responses to that work. So mid-level public operations manager can give an opinion on what the problem might be of implementing this readiness work in their institution. So really neat takes that I can quickly check, and the WhatsApp platform gives us opportunity to check, is that what people are actually saying in their space? You get the synthesized response and then a fact-checked result to say, is this what people are actually saying based on research? So really helpful for that. And I like that. I really like the way that you can build, any of us can build our own point of view into the app, which is about what's my take on the world. And I loaded a bunch of stuff around what I think the problems are, ranging from billionaires making too many decisions about politics to citizens being disempowered or whatever else, so that the take then on the document is based already on my point of view. Not surprisingly, as I wrote the document that it's referring to, there's a good level of overlap. But also kind of builds this opportunity for looking at some of the questions and decisions in a different way. I haven't gone through the detail of this yet, but again, mapping out things that I hadn't even thought of. So what I was able to, and the bit that I love is at the end of all of this work, I can just click the drive and then know that everything has been saved to my Google Drive for further reference, which I can then further interrogate through Claude or any of the other AIs, picking out those key points and then dropping that back into my final document. So I found it super useful as a way of really interrogating documents in a different way, and particularly by shuttling between those and the LLMs I'm using to build content. It feels really rigorous. So from the West Coast of Wales, Marshall, thank you for what you've been building. And it's a bit like have this experience of like running to try and I'm kind of double stepping all the time to catch up with the next iteration of app that Marshall's built into it, because it's been something added since I last used it. But I'm loving the way it's going, and sharing with other people is a pleasure. So Marshall, thank you for what you're doing and for the opportunity to share just a couple of bits about how it's working for me so far.
Oh, Andy, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to put together screenshots and for using all of this in support of such important pro-social and inspiring work. That's like, that is making my day already. That's fantastic. I wonder, could you speak to a little bit, Andy, like So I know behind the scenes, perhaps I know my answer to why wouldn't you just do the same analysis through a Claude or a Perplexity or one of the big LLMs? But what from your experience is why do you find yourself yeah using little old me's what's up with that instead of these those big the going straight to the LLMs?
I guess there's something that I'm finding that's really useful is that when I'm taking like particular critique pieces or earlier on, I took the whole of the G Drive output of all of those sessions, dropped all of that back into Claude and say, hey, have a look at this and see if there's anything we've missed. And every time I do that, Claude or GPT have come back and going, huh, there are some great points that have been raised here. So I know it's bringing in perspectives that weren't already in the LLM, and that in itself is really useful. And clearly, I can do that from asking any of the people on the call for a different perspective, but that takes a lot of time. So I think there's an apparent, well, there's a definite difference in what's coming up through WhatsApp with that versus what's coming straight from the LLMs themselves.